Thursday, everybody. So excited about this conversation. I've had this conversation with so many people here recently that I felt like it was something that needed to be dive in deeper. So that's what we're going to do today. I've had a lot of people recently asking, what's the market going to be looking like, not just this year, but long term? And that's something that, as a realtor, I have to think about, but also as a resident of Georgia, it's something that I think about often because I'm a resident here for certain reasons. I've been born and raised here, and I love a lot of the things that Georgia has to offer, but a lot of the things about Georgia is changing. And so, I've had to really think about those as a resident and as a realtor. So, thanks for joining. Tell me where you guys are joining from. So, I know we have people all over checking these out, people from California, New York, Chicago, Miami. So yeah, drop it in the chat where you guys are joining from, because this is actually part of the conversation today is different states versus different states and the affordability of that. uh, Duluth, I love it. So you're just down the street. Do you like Duluth, Yusuf? Because I love Duluth. That's actually where I grew up. I went to Duluth High School many moons ago. We won't talk about the when we graduated, but um, I grew up in Duluth, so I love Duluth. Buford, ATAC, awesome. Love Buford also. Favorite restaurants are in Buford, some of them. Aquaterra, and I'll actually be there tomorrow. Uh, so some of the things that I wanted to kind of focus on today were really state versus state, because it's really interesting, being born and raised in Georgia. When I was younger, it was a lot less crowded than it is now. Um, there were not really any urban developments in the suburbs. So the city of Atlanta was really like the hub, and it really was just the city, and that's where everything started. And if you lived in Cheshire Bridge area or Chamblee, then that was considered the suburbs. Like you lived way on out there, as people here in the South call it. Um, Chamblee was like suburbia, and you had to get on main roads to get into the city. There was no walkability factor if you were outside of the city. And so as more people came to the city, the suburbs got pushed further and further out. And so then you ended up with places like Swanee and Buford, Duluth. However, at the time that those places, those cities were started, there was no infrastructure thoughts on buses, trains, getting into the city. There was no walkability factor. There was no urban vibe to any of that. And so it's because the city of Atlanta was like the hub, and you commuted into the city. And so that's what you did. So talking about all of that, you have to really look at jobs and how they have evolved over time. Back when we didn't have all of the jobs that we have now that are on computers, everything was agricultural more. And so these areas, Duluth, Swanee, Buford, over into Milton, Milton is still horse farms and things like that. For a lot of the land there is still horse farms, but in a lot of these areas, this was agricultural, especially in Buford. Buford is so rich in history when it comes to the agricultural side of things. And so it's very interesting to watch how jobs just over time have kind of evolved. And so with that, I feel like a lot of the cities have had to evolve, and some of them have been slower than others. And obviously, with time, wages evolve. And that's something that I've had to have conversations with people recently, because we have had an influx of people coming from places like California, New York, Miami. And it really kind of stirred with COVID, the shutdown, and a lot of people were just done. They were ready to get out. And here in the South, we don't always abide by all of the rules that the rest of people abide by. And we shut down for a little while, but then we were very much just proceed like normal, where a lot of states in the US did not do that. And so a lot of people were like, we're going to Georgia. On top of that, we've had so many companies come here recently. So in California, you get paid a little bit more than you do when you're here. However, it is far more expensive to live there than it is to live in Georgia. And so you may take a little bit of a pay cut when you come here, but it's also much more affordable to live here, or at least it was. So this is the conversation that I've been having with so many people is, where do we see this going? Because if I look here, and I'm going to share some of the slides with you. So if you look at this slide here, leisure and hospitality is one of the biggest things that is the wage gains across large portions of the economy. So leisure and hospitality, I feel like that is one of the ones that took one of the biggest hits when we hit COVID, because if you think about it, we couldn't go out. So that was cutting out hotels, that was cutting out travel, that was cutting out eating out, restaurants. So leisure and hospitality was hit really hard. So it makes sense that that is one of the largest ones that's coming back. Because if you paused on all of that for so long, now you've got all of that coming back. So you've had a lot of new hires in the leisure and hospitality. So, new restaurants have come about. Unfortunately, a lot of restaurants went out of business. So you've got new ones that are coming up. You've got a lot of people that were locked up for a solid amount of time in 2020. And so they just hit the ground running when it came to travel. And so Georgia actually had the ninth largest rate increase as far as wages. Now, the two highest were Florida and New Hampshire. They saw the highest gains with roughly 12%, and Georgia came in at 7%. So we were ninth on the list as far as seeing rate gains as far as wages. However, we also saw massive amounts of home price increases. So if you're seeing rates going up as far as wages, but you're also seeing inflation on housing going up, is it equaling itself out so that your wage is matching the inflation of housing? And the answer is a hard no. It's not. I live here. Groceries went up substantially. Used to, I was spending roughly $150 a week on groceries for a family of four. Yes, that's not a lot, but now I'm spending a solid $250 a week. So it's gone up substantially. Restaurants, eating out has gone up substantially. I feel like I tell my kids, you can just eat off my plate now because restaurants are crazy expensive. And then housing prices. Housing prices, we all know, we've been watching, they've gone up substantially over the last couple of years. And so if we gain 15%, equity a year, so that, going up, wages are not matching that. And then on top of that, rent is also going up. Wages aren't matching that either. So if I look here at my notes, Florida and New Hampshire, they went up 12% for wages. That's pretty substantial. That's awesome. Their market is probably matching a little bit better as far as housing affordability because their wages went up with that also. Because if you look here again, you can kind of see all of the different states. Idaho was another one that went up a lot, which I have to say kind of surprised me. If any of you have ever visited like Idaho, Wyoming, I would love to hear from you because I have not visited those areas. And there's a lot of people that talk about those areas and that there is major growth in those specific areas. And I truly am thinking of like flying out there and just checking it out because I really want to see what it is that's driving things over there. Because here, again, we've had multiple companies move here. If you talk about like Sinley Studios has come, the movie industry is booming here. Rivian came, Duluth Trading Company, Norfolk Southern, Facebook opened up here, Microsoft. And I don't know if you guys just saw, thanks to my husband, he's amazing. He sent me Sam's Club. They just released, they're going to have a new fulfillment center in Douglasville, and they're going to be needing over 600 positions to be filled when that position or when that facility opens up. So I understand the draw to Georgia. There have been so many companies that have moved here because Georgia's taxes are very lenient on businesses. And so it has drawn a lot of companies here. And with new jobs, I've said it before, what drives people here? Companies come, then jobs come. Jobs are everywhere here in Georgia. The job opportunities are endless here in Georgia. We actually, a lot of restaurants that I frequent, they have shortages of people. So if anyone's telling you that there's not job opportunities here in Georgia, I'm not saying that they're lying. I'm saying that they're not looking hard enough because there's job opportunities. And another article that I was reading, I found it very interesting. Georgia Tech, which is one of the biggest schools that we have, is in the city of Atlanta. Um, Georgia Tech is one of the top 2 schools for tech graduates in the entire US. And so a lot of these companies that are tech based and tech focused actually moved here for the sole purpose to have better opportunities to have some of these graduates instead of relocating a lot of the graduates because many of them were coming from Georgia Tech. They ended up coming here because they said it's so much easier to interview and vet some of these people coming right out of Georgia Tech, and then they're hiring them and they're already right here in Georgia. And so that was a big factor for the companies moving here, not to mention again those taxes that we talked about. So as we're starting to see this go on, many of these businesses are finding that Georgia is just a better option for them. And so then you're having all of the people come here because then they've got job opportunities, not to mention the affordability. But now the affordability is kind of going away, if you will, because it's getting more expensive. So the problem with this is a lot of people that are here from Georgia that live here, either born and raised here, like myself, or people that have moved here and been here for quite some time, they're not loving what's going on. I don't, ATAC, I firmly believe if you want work, you can find it. I agree. I agree. There's a lot of job opportunities here. So that being said, we've talked about this before, and sorry, I lost my train of thought, you guys. ATAC totally threw me off there. Georgians, do you, if you've lived here for a while, how do you feel about everything that's going on, the massive growth that's been happening? So I actually grew up in Duluth. I moved to Flowery Branch when I got married, and now I live in Swanee with my kids, and I've been here for about 12 years. And so we moved to Swanee, my husband and I, 12 years ago for the schools. Right after we had my daughter, we just wanted to get into a place that had good schools and be there. Well, since we've lived here, Swanee has had massive amounts of growth. And so sometimes that's not always loved by everyone. Um, Myself kind of included, I have to be honest. I love the people that are coming here and I like the urbanization that's going on, but I don't love the traffic. That's something that's really frustrating. Um, I- let's see, Yusuf, are you expecting a decline in housing prices in the market in 2023? That's a great question. And that's kind of what we're talking about today. I really was anticipating to have more decline on housing prices than we've seen. We have seen some houses that have had a little bit of a decrease, but it's a minimal increase or decrease. It's about 5% that we're seeing across the board. And so I really thought that we would see a little bit more than that. And then ironically, so in Georgia, our spring market is kind of, March, April is when our rush of time comes. And then by summer, it's full blast. We're hustling and bustling as far as the real estate market goes. Our spring has already started, and I actually have ended up in multiple offer situations on 2 contracts the last couple of weeks. One of them we won, but we did have to go in a little bit over the asking price, about $10,000. So not as substantial as we were seeing before. There were only 3 offers compared to last year. You were competing against 10 or 20 offers. So it's a very different ball game as far as the amount of people. However, we're still in multiple offers, which is something that I was not anticipating really having in the market this year. So we have seen people reducing prices. What we're seeing is the houses that are move-in ready, updated, ready to go as far as a resale purpose, those houses are getting full ask, sometimes even over. The houses that need a little bit of work or maybe they're not updated. Maybe it's very well taken care of, but the bathrooms are older. It was a house built in the 90s. You're going to redo the kitchen, you're going to redo the bathrooms. Those houses, you're able to negotiate a little bit more on those properties. And so that's something that I ask people to really consider when they're thinking about buying a home. So many people are focused on new construction. You're going to pay for new construction. Those builders are not reducing prices. Now, they are giving incentives. So that's somewhere that you have to watch because they are giving incentives. So a lot of builders will not take money off of the price of the house, but they will give you closing cost, or they may pay for a reduction in your rate. They'll do a rate buy down. They may give you hardwood floors somewhere or give you a refrigerator, but the price itself, they're not really usually willing to come off of. So that's something that you have to consider when you're looking at new construction is you're going to be financing that full amount. Whereas with resale, you're able to do a little bit more negotiating as far as the purchase price. So if you need to get it down a little bit, but keep in mind, we've only been really seeing maybe 5%, which is not substantial. So that's a great question. Naomi, do you think that since so many businesses and people moving to Georgia will lower the wages in the near future? I actually don't. I'm thinking that we're actually going to see wages continue to rise because when businesses are coming here, there's more demand. And so I think that we're going to see wages continue to rise. The struggle is, and this is where, I pose the question because I've had it posed to me, is Georgia the next California? Wages are going to increase, I believe, but so is housing. We've seen it. We've seen it the last couple of years. Homes that I go and look at, and I know darn well this house should be a $350,000 house is now 550. A house that was 700 before is now $1 million. And so we've seen substantial growth here in Georgia the last couple of years. And so that's just increasing housing as well as increasing groceries, restaurants, everything that we just talked about. And so as wages increase, so is everything else. So how are we going to make sure that we're leveling it out, that our wages are increasing to match Georgia's inflation? And that's kind of a scary thing that, we all need to be keeping a watch on. Yusuf, I love Swanee. I do too. I will say one of the interesting things, Gwinnett County has been one of the leaders, and I wanted to share this slide with you guys right here. The urbanization. So Gwinnett County has been one of the leaders of trying to do more urbanization in the area. Many of the cities in Gwinnett have been working to add condos. They've been doing walking trails, boutique style shopping, restaurants, all sorts of things like that. And I, for one, am loving it because while I am definitely a suburbanite girl, I really do like being able to have a little bit of city. Like, I'm not a city girl where I could live in the city of Atlanta. I just don't think I would survive. I like my car. I like to drive places. I like all the trees. However, I do love the fact of being able to walk to some restaurants. Now, this article was actually shared to me by a gentleman that I'm friends with on Facebook. His name is Joel Lively. I've actually known him since high school. It's kind of funny, but he shared this article with me, and I found it really interesting to see what people considered the pros and the cons to urbanization. Because again, a lot of people that have lived here in Georgia for a long time are not necessarily loving all of the growth. However, it has its pros and it has its cons. Better public transportation, overall infrastructure, education opportunities. I would argue on the education opportunities. I feel like our schools are getting very populated, so they're going to be needing to add schools to keep up with the population. That's something that as a parent, I don't necessarily appreciate sometimes. And again, I've told you guys before, I'm here to be unapologetically honest. And that's what I'm doing because I want you to know exactly what you're coming into, especially if you don't already live in Georgia. I want you to know exactly what Georgia is like. Obviously, I live here. My kids go to school here. So I love it. There are things that I feel like we could do better. Um, more convenient if you have kids, connection to electricity grid and sewer systems. We have that here, more efficient in terms of land use. Now, that I will say is true. One of the things that we've watched with builders is prices on homes are getting more expensive because land is more expensive. People don't think about the fact that the builder had to pay 2 or 3 times what they used to for land. And so people get frustrated because houses are right on top of each other. Well, yeah, they are, because the land is so expensive. They got to cram in as many houses as they possibly can to be able to get their money back. Now, don't get me wrong, they're, definitely making their money, but that's something as to why you see the houses closer together and you don't see these half acre or acre lots any longer, because the land is so expensive. So better connection to healthcare facilities. You know, a lot of these pros I feel like we do have in the suburbs. I really do. The cons, higher level of air pollution, more particle pollution, noise pollution. These are all things that I find concerning no matter what. So you can see here, Georgia sees the ninth largest wage increase. So that is exciting. What we were just talking about. For me, looking at this, Gwinnett has been one of the leaders in trying to head this up as far as the urbanization. Swanee has done that. They already have Swanee Town Center. Now they're building Swanee Town Center West. It's going to have some living, some shopping, some restaurants. Sugar Hill is one of the places that I think has done a fantastic job. Sugar Hill, I feel like, was one of those areas that has been overlooked. It was kind of in the shadow of Swanee for such a long time. It was not getting the new construction builds like Swanee was. And when your high school in Sugar Hill is a great school, Sugar Hill as a whole in the downtown area has done a fantastic job. They've got apartments, they've got condos. The walkability is really, really good. Swanee's struggle has been the walkability factor, because while they have made the trails throughout Swanee, I am a little out of shape and I'm not walking 5 miles or 7 miles or however long it is to get to Swanee Town Center from where I live, because by the time I get there, I'm exhausted and now I don't even want to eat because I'm about to pass out. So to me, I need a closer location. So in downtown Sugar Hill, you do have that ability to just walk down, walk right out, and go to the downtown area. Another one of my favorites is Duluth. Duluth has a great downtown. And it's funny for me and ironic because my husband and I both actually graduated from Duluth High School. We won't talk about the year, but it was long enough ago that it was not like you see Duluth today. There was a little corner store, it was a pharmacy, and we would go in there. I feel like I'm 50 telling this story. We would go in and we would get like suckers or lollipops or whatever, in that corner store. And the only thing that's still like it was is Rexall Grill. Rexall Grill, we would go and we would get breakfast sometimes, and it was fantastic. And Rexall Grill is still standing. But how you see Duluth, the park today, is not how it was when we were kids. And so Duluth really did a big overhaul and put in a lot of the shopping, restaurants. They did a fantastic job with that green space. And then they host a lot of live concerts. So the little amphitheater that they have, they did a great job and they really thought it out, because then across the street on Buford Highway, they've been building condos and apartments down through that corridor of Buford Highway. So they did really think it through. And another area, if you haven't checked out, is Woodstock. Y'all, Woodstock is absolutely adorable. So the Town Lake area of Woodstock is going to be more like suburban areas, but then the downtown corridor of Woodstock, y'all, is absolutely adorable. So if you haven't, checked that out, make sure that you do. I actually just did a video on it the other day, so check out that video. You can see the downtown. But so I would love to hear your thoughts, Anthony. I see you. Do you think as rates rise, we'll see more ARMs or higher rate buy downs like a 3-1 or 5-1? Absolutely, yes. I'm already seeing a lot of that now. And I think a lot of people are scared of these because of what happened in 2008. And I guess leading up to 2008, 2006, 2007, 2008. But let me tell you where it's different. Because I had this conversation at dinner the other night with Grant. And I was talking to him about this because he's like, oh, Jesus, here we go. We're back in 2008. and we're going to have these arms, and then they're going to adjust and people aren't going to be able to afford them. And here we go again with the foreclosures. That's not how it is, because let me tell you where it's different. Anthony, let's use you as an example. Let's say you do a 3-1 arm. Right now, the most popular one that I'm seeing is a 2-1, because a lot of people are anticipating that rates are going to come down by the end of the year. If not this year, definitely next year. So if you have that 2-1 arm, it gives you time to go ahead and have those rates adjust back down, and then you refinance. So I'm going to give you my personal opinion on this, and I have a disclaimer, this is my personal opinion. Now, the facts are that arms are very different than they were in 2006, 2007. Anthony, you go and you get an arm. They're not going to qualify you only at the rate that you're getting at that time. So let's say that they're qualifying you at a 5% interest and it's going to adjust up to a 7% interest rate. They're not qualifying you only at 5%, which is what they did leading up to 2008. Well, then when it adjusted, you could no longer afford it. And they didn't qualify you at that because they were banking on you're going to refinance. Well, a lot of people didn't refinance, and then rates were out of control. And so then they couldn't refinance. And so you never qualified on that higher rate. And now you can't afford your house and you have to let it go to the bank. A lot of people were also borrowing against their homes. That was the number one thing that we saw. And I'm not going to lie, I've seen people doing it here recently. There's so much equity that they gained that they're borrowing against. Be careful. Don't get greedy. Do not get greedy. Do not borrow against your house on money that you don't have. So now, Anthony, if you go to get qualified for an adjustable rate mortgage, they're not only going to qualify you at the lower rate, they're also going to qualify you at the capping rate to make sure if this rate adjusts all the way to this cap, can Anthony afford this payment at that rate? Does he qualify with his debt to incomes, other things that he has, car payments, whatever you might have? Do you still qualify, and can you afford that with what you have income coming in? And so that will help. Most of the time, people will refinance. When their rates come down, you'll refinance. Something that I have a concern about, I shouldn't say a concern, but it's something that I don't love, but I see people buying down their rates. And I get why you're doing it. But here's my thing. Hear me out. And again, this is where my personal opinion comes in. This is not fact or fiction. This is just my personal opinion as a member in the real estate community. Let's say that you are going to get a rate today and you buy it down. To buy down your rate is substantially expensive. So if you're spending $30,000 to buy down the rate, you better be staying in that house for a long time, because paying $30,000 on a home is going to take you a lot of years in that house to gain that back. And unless you're gaining back that equity in the next couple of years, or you're planning to stay there for the long haul, I don't think buying down the rate is the right answer. Because also, what if rates come down like a lot of people are anticipating? All of the economists are saying by the end of 2023, definitely by 2024, we're going to see rates coming back down. If you just spent $30,000 to buy down that rate and they adjust back down and you can refinance, you just wasted $30,000. You wasted all of that money buying down the rate when you could have just been patient and waited for that rate. Yes, it sucks right now because it is making affordability what you were able to afford at a lower interest rate. Now you can't even afford that. So you're not getting the house. I fully understand what's going on there. And that is what is so frustrating, because it's taking a lot of options away from people as far as the housing that they were looking at to start with. So Anthony, that was a whole lot more than you probably asked for, but that is my thoughts on the ARMs and the rate buy downs. Naomi, even though I feel as though Gwinnett is super crowded, I do love the investments they have made in all of the small cities. I agree with you 100%. Gwinnett has been the leader as far as that goes. And it's funny, if you look, Gwinnett has the top number of new construction starts for this month. However, and this is where I try to tell you, you have to be careful and read all of the details, because the media tries to trick you. And there was an article that came out that said Gwinnett County was #1 this month in starts for new construction. And they were. That's not a lie. However, if you look at year over year, they're down by about 20%. So, yes, they're top dog this month, but they're also down year over year trends. So, it doesn't necessarily equal out. The only city that did not see a decline in year over year trends, which in real estate, that's something that we really look at. The only people or the only city that did not see a decline year over year is Dawson County. Dawson County did not see a reduction in new construction starts in their year over year trends. So Dawson is one that did not see the growth that Gwinnett saw. They did see growth, but not as much as Gwinnett. Gwinnett was trying to keep up. The builders were just pumping out homes as fast as they could because they had such a delay in getting all of the materials that they needed. So they were a little bit behind. So they had people that were a year out, 2 years out from being able to move into their home. So Gwinnett was trying to pump them out as quickly as they could. Dawson was keeping on a more regular pace, right? So year over year, they're still doing really well. And we've seen a lot of people move to the Dawson area, Dawsonville, Chestatee, because it is an absolutely gorgeous area. Now, it's not a place to go if you're having to commute into the city on a regular basis because that commute, y'all, Atlanta traffic is not for the faint of heart. You've heard me say it in a couple of my videos. It is do or die. I do not I feel for anybody that has to make that trip because it's not one that I want to do at any point in time. I definitely have to sometimes, but coming from Chestatee or Dawson, having to commute into the city is not going to be something you want to do on a regular basis. However, a lot of people have gone virtual. And that's the beauty of a lot of the jobs over the last couple of years. They've gone virtual. So you can move a little bit further out. That's why we saw a lot of people leave the city. They came into the suburbs, have a little bit of grass for the dog to run in. And then you're able to go online. The, what we've seen recently, though, is a lot of those companies have realized, oh, maybe we want to go back to having workers in the office. The camaraderie is not there when everybody's working from home. Um, if we start to see production going down, which I would question if we aren't already, if we are seeing production go down, I guarantee you're going to start seeing a lot of companies demanding people to come back in. And I wonder what that's going to do if people are going to move back into the city or if they'll just start to have that commute. I know a lot of people kind of do a hybrid program where they go into the office a couple of days and then they work from home a couple of days to kind of offset. So I, for one, love the urbanization that's going on. Everything that you do has pros and cons to it. I definitely feel like infrastructure is somewhere that the state of Georgia is going to have to focus as we have an increase in population because driving around, you will see tons of construction going on, road construction. And that is the most annoying thing ever because you've got constantly roads closed or going down to one lane, and it makes all of us want to lose our minds. So, Georgia, do a better job on infrastructure, get it together. Schools, I think you're going to have to step that up as far as the building. However, the walkability factor, the option to just go to restaurants and boutiques, I absolutely love. And so I definitely think that the urbanization of Georgia is something that is going to continue. It's something that we're going to keep seeing. And I really love it. So make sure that you're going around and checking out those different cities, see which one is the best of you for you. And if you have questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week.